I'm really delighted to be able to host this holiday vision party because I can include the origin story, really, going, as Bill said, looking back on our life, um, like Barry Manilow did as a child, seeing yourself as a child. And I'm remembering what the holidays were like in my home. I lived in Beverly Hills. 90% of the kids at Beverly High, I didn't get to go to Beverly High, but were from the Jewish tradition. So there was some diversity already going on in my neighborhood, of course. And my brother was passionate about every religion there was. So I always felt like I had a kind of a view of an opening of embracing all the different traditions. And it's so joyful to be here this morning and be able to do that with you, because there's a lot of diversity right here in our group. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about what Christmas was like for me. We had a very contentious home, and my father was quite abusive, let's say. But there was something about Christmas that my mom loved making fudge, and that was part of, I got to chop the nuts, and that was the beginning of my whole interest in cooking. And we decorated the tree. Mother made red bows, red satin bows, and we had red ball ornaments. So every ball had a bow on top, and I still do that to this day. That's the way my tree feels like the most home for me. Excuse me, I'm having a little frog in my throat, I guess. And I remember being told that it's much better to give than receive. I'm sure you heard that as a child, and it didn't make any sense at all, because it was really all about what we were going to get. And that's kind of a metaphor for, I think, today's world, it's all about what we're going to get. But I must say that this past year, especially the 9 months in our wisdom circle, have been all about how giving is much better than receiving. And so many wonderful opportunities have come up for that this year, since I decided to give away 90% of my stuff. And I can't tell you how joyful it's making me. The last day of the retreat, we all put things on the altar that were treasures that other people could select from and take home. And I just filled it up with all kinds of goodies that people really appreciated. So the inside edge, the feeling of the inside edge first began when I began giving cooking classes in my kitchen in the valley, and Lexi was 3 months old. And I had postpartum depression, but this became the way out of it, was to have people come into my kitchen, sit there, and we would do different menus for entertaining. And there was something about the vibe of all these people. There were even some men there, just kind of spontaneously sharing their stories about food, and especially the holiday class, because I did one called, it was all about things to make and give that were food treats, then how to wrap them. And I did my mom's fudge, and I invited people to bring a taste of something that was traditional for their holidays. And then everybody told their stories about that. And it was really just the warmest feeling. That holiday class was the warmest feeling of any of the classes that I ever did. And I remember I even created a little booklet about making and giving gifts for the holidays, and put everybody's recipes in there. And then everybody had all of my recipes and everybody else's. This is going somewhere, because that was really the beginning of the inside edge in a way. The time came, I had spent 5 years writing The Pleasure of Your Company, which was Paul's and my first cookbook. and I was desperate to get it sold. And we had a psychic friend who was a real psychic. And I asked him, I said, when in the world is this book going to be published? And he said, I see a circle around the month of June, but there's not just one book, there's two books. And I thought, holy cow, how am I ever, it took 5 years to write this book. How would I ever write another book by June? And then I met an agent who went to New York, was taking our book, The Pleasure of Your Company, to New York. And she said, but I'm going to take it over and show it to Jeremy Tarcher first. And Jeremy Tarcher was a publisher. He was married to Shari Lewis, who did Lamb Chop, the puppet. And he was known for a book he had done called the Mother Earth Plant Book. And it had been an international bestseller. It had been absolutely huge. But he liked crafts and things like that. And I said, oh, well, if you're going to see Jeremy Tarcher, you should take along this little Christmas booklet that I have from one of my classes. And she did. And he said, oh, I don't want this big book. I want this other book. And here it is, With Love from Your Kitchen. And both books sold in June. And they both came out the following September, the next year. And it's all illustrated by Paul's father, did all the illustrations in this book. I mean, it's just precious, and it's all things to make and give. So that's really where the Inside Edge began, because when it began on October 25th of 1985, our first party took place about a month later, and it was the day after Thanksgiving party. And people brought their leftovers, and I think that still goes on, thanks to Harvey and Melanie. And about a few weeks later, we decided to give something called the Holiday Vision Party. And so that's what I'm wishing for this to become here today. And we had a tree that was decorated only with lights. And we invited people to bring an ornament that represented their vision for the following year. And I think Tim Peering was there, and I think Brooke was probably there. He would know, he would probably remember. Mary Kelly, maybe Pamela Shandell was there. There were only about 30 of us at that point. But something happened there where people brought the most precious little symbols and meaningful things. One had something made from the olive wood from Gethsemane in Bethlehem. I mean, in wherever that is. I guess it's in Jerusalem. But they spoke about the meaning of this and how they found this ornament. Somebody else brought an origami $50 bill folded into a swan that represented playful prosperity. And this is how we originally got to know each other at the Inside Edge, and people sharing their stories. So what I'm really wanting this morning is for us to share either a story of something joyful and beautiful and meaningful about the holidays in your own tradition, or perhaps you have an idea of what an ornament would look like that would be representative of what you wish for this coming year. The giving, I'll tell another story a little bit later at the end about giving and how meaningful it became. But is there somebody who might want to share a story about their holiday traditions, or something meaningful about the next year for them? I'm not seeing any hands yet, and I'm getting a little scared. Oh, good, Jonathan.
Yeah, it's not a holiday Sunday. I had the opportunity of spending summers with my grandparents, and this is my dad's mom and dad, Emma Bell and John Henry. And every Sunday, we would first come together, and they would pray for everybody all over the country. They would go through each family and bless them and wish them well. And we would all just be standing there. And also, the adults would eat first and then the children. But I remember my dad telling us a story about when they were young, there were 9 or 10 siblings. The minister would come over after church, and my grandmother was like, "Oh, have some more, Reverend." "Oh, no, 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 Sister Emma. No, 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 I've had enough." But she would insist, "Oh, please, come on, Reverend. Okay, okay, if you insist." And this would go on. And my dad said they would watch their piece of chicken go, like everybody had an assigned piece of chicken. So they would watch the the reverends taking their food, right? Yeah, it was like that. So it was that kind of gathering and coming together. Yeah, thanks.
Mhm. Isn't that the best thing about this time of year? There's such warmth and gatherings, so many new extra gatherings. Nita.
Following on Jonathan's memory of childhood, uh, when this meeting started, I thought, oh, I don't know, do I have any? And immediately this popped into my mind. When I was about 8 years old, my mother's whole family, all her brothers and sisters and all the cousins met at my grandmother's house in Brady, Texas. And it was a big old house, and the whole front was round, and there was a giant tree, and we're all sitting there. And I can think back on that and completely recreate everything from the linoleum on the floor, to the tree, to the curtains. But the thing that jumps out is all the women in my family had pierced ears. And I always said to my mother, when do I get my ears pierced? And she said, when you get a pair of earrings. And that Christmas, I opened up a little box, and there was a little pair of earrings. And I said, oh, wow, I get my ears pierced. And my Aunt Phala, spelled P-H-A-L-A. And if anybody's interested in unique family names, come to me. I have a plethora of them. So Aunt Phala had very long red fingernails, and I mean long. And she said, come over here, honey, and sit down. I sat down between her knees on the floor, and she took those red fingernails and she started pinching my earlobes, and she pinched my earlobes until they were numb.
No.
And I'm sitting there like, oh, I wasn't expecting this. And my mother's like, beauty requires pain. So she pinched them, and then she did the old, cork with the needle and, pulled it through. And of course, they were swollen and hurting. And later on the playground, I infected them and all of that. But it was like I had finally become one of the women in my family. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. That's so wonderful. Thank you. Let's hear from some more people. Bonnie.
Hi, so I wanted to show my Santa Claus, my baby Santa Claus, that was given to me by my parents. Can you see it? Given to me by my parents when I was somewhere between 5 and 7 years old. So this is like 70 years old. At some point in time, I got this back from my mother. And so I have it under the tree every year. Christmas was always a big deal. My mother made it so beautiful. Of course, my father was a Baptist minister, and my mother was the minister's wife. And so every Christmas we would have an open house at our house, and I would help to gather people's coats and put them away. And my mother just made everything just absolutely special and gorgeous. And so I have such fond memories of that. And just we went to church all the time. Of course, I was always in church, and I had many times of just hating having to go to church all the time. But at Christmas time, with all the lights and with all the beautiful singing, and as I got older and I was in the choir, and we would have our Christmas music and the Christmas singing, and that was always the very special, that made it all very special and worthwhile. So, but anyway, one of the things about now, you see the yellow one, you see the blonde hair with the beard. So the reason that I like this so much is it makes me laugh, and best times of Christmas for us and with our boys when they were young, and even when they were a little older, when they would get to laughing and be falling on the floor laughing, those were just the best times. And that's what it all means to me, is just being together and laughing and playing together, playing games. So that's my little share. Thank you.
Thank you. Laughter is so healing. All those endorphins running around. We used to laugh until we just couldn't stand laughing anymore.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah. It's the best kind. Yeah.
Right.
So I can go.
Good.
We lived in a farmhouse in Michigan, and my parents had the tradition of putting the tree up while we were asleep, Christmas Eve, and decorating it. And so we would all, me and my three brothers would come scurrying down the stairs as early in the morning as possible. And there it was, the magic, the tree was all decorated, pencil and all that. So it was just wonderful to have that surprise in the morning.
Thank you, both of you.
I remember we used to go to Colleen's. She used to be a member of Mastery Circle. We used to meet at her house, and her tree was so beautiful after we left, and it was gorgeous. And I always loved to go there because she always had the most beautiful decorations, and she brought them out, and she's like, Jasmine, use your imagination, whatever you want. And I said, oh, okay. I've always felt so loved, and it really brought us together, and that's a good memory to have. So thank you. Thank you for having me share.
Yeah.
Thanks, Diana. I'm just luxuriating in the memories and experiencing those. So it's so beautiful. Thank you for creating this. I'm thinking back to my childhood, and particularly the better times when we lived in Pittsburgh, and it was my two brothers and my sister and I, the innocence and and activity of childhood, and always there was the big one. Where's the big one? There was a big gift. It was a bicycle or whatever it was. So, where is it? Where's it hidden? And I try to figure out. But there was always a lot of whispering, a lot of all this kind of thing, and then the wonderful opening of the presents on Christmas. And I do remember also my father having us kids along with him as he had a special appointment to see. He worked for Gulf Oil, and there was a janitor that he had befriended in the building, and we went to this guy's house, and he lived in McKees Rocks, which was a slum area, and he lived in kind of a shack, and he was all alone, and we went in to see him, and we brought him Christmas presents and food, and just spent some time with him. Just wished him a very good holiday, and that's always made an impression on me. Just the joy that we experienced, and try to bring a little of that to somebody in other circumstances. So thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Levita.
Yes, thank you, Diana. I'm still very hoarse and I'll probably cough, so that's just part of the package right now. I remember distinctly one year for Christmas, the tree was all decorated and it was, you know, a lot of presents under the tree, and my parents left. And this is a Home Alone story. For anyone that knows the movie, it's like you don't leave a kid home alone. And I think one of the last things they said, my parents, as they were leaving, was not to touch the presents. And I walked around the tree and I got down and I read all the labels and I looked and I was on my belly and rearranging. And then I thought, I'll just open one. And so I found the ones that had my name on them. And of course, you can't just open one. It's like, go ahead, have a bite of this cookie. So as I unwrapped all of my own packages and wrapped them back up again, mind you, this is a kid rewrapping packages that an adult had wrapped. Then I decided I needed to know what my brother got. So I unwrapped all of his and looked at them and rewrapped. Then I decided that there were some left that I didn't even know relatives were coming or anything. So I ended up unwrapping all of the presents, rewrapping them, I'm sure stuffing them back under and being innocent and, you know, without fault or guilt. My parents came home and my mother said, it looks like an elf has been here. You know, do you know anything about this? It was like, no, I didn't, cross my heart. And I'll tell you, they never said a word. They just went about their business. I don't even know how long it was till Christmas. But on Christmas morning, they would hand me this rumpled package that was half taped, half undone. And it was like, I already knew it was the most disappointing Christmas I ever had. And I knew what everybody got. And I just sat there in my conundrum. Not only did I lie, I broke all the rules of the household and I denied everything. And it was like, it just was like heartbreaking. And yet at the same time, a big, huge lesson. You know, it's like, you don't want to preempt Santa Claus. And on the same one, at the very last minute, as I'm sitting crestfallen and admitted what I had done, my mother said something about, well, look, that tape didn't stick, isn't that? I mean, they played it up. My folks were like that. They would just play me like a fish until they, reeled me in, and I was dead meat on the bank. And I finally confessed what was going on. And the last gift they brought was wrapped impeccably. And it was what I wanted. My heart's desire was a new pair of roller skates because I live by the roller drome in Culver City. And that was like my favorite place to be. And finally, I had my own pair of skates. So that's my most memorable Christmas. What a wonderful topic. Thank you.
I remember those skates where you had to put them on over your saddle shoes and you had to screw them on, right?
Oh, well, that's what I'd
You
had
had
up till
real
that
ones.
point.
Yeah.
These were they were like the big deal. The white boots with the,
Oh, cool.
it was for the roller drome, I mean, I was like suddenly crestfallen to the heights of my, wildest dreams come true. Thank you, Diana. This is a great topic.
I did the same thing, Nita. I remember one Christmas when I
It's Levita.
Oh, Levita, excuse me. I would go down and I would carefully open the package. I never was discovered, but it completely ruined Christmas for me. I knew exactly what was coming. Whitney.
Well, we had a lot of great Christmases when I was, from 4 to 8 years old. And what I remember most affectionately was Christmas Eve, and our cousins would come, and aunt and uncle, and the 4 of us kids and my parents. And we had a big old house, and the tree was already up, and we had like 3 Christmases. But my grandmother would always give all of us the same pajamas. So it was always a big deal. We'd all go up and with our package of pajamas, go up, and we'd all come down in our pajamas, all 8 of us kids. And maybe, I don't think my mother partook, but I just remember feeling like, oh, we're all just one with all the same. A lot of the years we got Lance nightgowns for the girls, but then some of the earlier years where they were just all pajamas. And 8 kids in the same pajamas was really fun, and it felt like a real family then. And that was nice. The other, I guess I remember the best Christmases, we had wanted a dog, the 4 of us kids, so we formed a club on the bed. We were going to run away to Vermont to the mountains and have a dog farm, or I don't know what. And our parents said, no, you're not getting a dog. No, no, no. And so finally, of course, at Christmas, all the presents were already open, but there was a knock at the door. And so we all run to the door and open the door, and here comes this dog. And it was such
Oh.
a joyous moment. That was Biffy. That
Oh,
was a great Christmas.
how
That's
great. I remember
Thank
those
you for that, Whitney. Thank you.
I remember those lounge nightgowns. I had one for Christmas too.
yeah, every year, every
It was so fun. I see Afton has her, and then Linda.
Well, one very quick one and then a little history. My son was 9 years old, and now I was a single mom, and I got him everything, a bicycle, and the room was filled with presents, and he opened them appreciatively and happy. But at the end, he stood there and he said, "Is that all there is?" That was a lesson a little bit in greed that we talked about.
Mhm.
Now he's the opposite, but that the 9-year-old son. But a little bit of history is, and it's a little sad. In when I was very young, Julianne's father, who was for me bigger than life, would throw huge Christmases. All the relatives would come, and everybody would get lovely presents. And this went on for many years. And when he didn't do it, my mother did it, the same thing. And then when he wasn't able to do it anymore, my mother had everybody there, big deal, sing along, trees. It was magical. She invited students from UCLA who didn't have any place to go. Not that she knew, she just called UCLA and said, do you have three or four students who would like to come and have Christmas with us? And we made friends that way. It was just great. And as the time went on, no one took over this. And it became, we didn't even get, sometimes my brother would get together. Now he says, since the pandemic, he says, no, I don't think so. I offered Thanksgiving to take food over and a meal. He said, no, I don't think we want to do that right now. And so now, and then my son has gone away. I never go there. And I think back to those incredible years when it was such a big deal and everyone thought it was such a big deal. And now it's not a big deal. So it's in fact, people in my family are all such introverts. They don't even want to do anything anymore. So that's a happy past and a little bit of coming to terms with how it's become now.
Well, I hope this morning is filling up your heart with some good holiday cheer.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's wonderful to hear people's stories. We have Linda and then Mim.
Story is like, I love it.
Good.
Before I was a therapist, I was a television reporter, and I would work on Christmas and always be assigned to follow people who had something to say. And I remember this one man, he bought his girlfriend a car and filled it with stuff. And he was just so lovely, just so lovely. And there were many, many, many stories like that I got to share. And I think that was a very, very wonderful time.
Thank you, Linda. Mim.
Yes, we lived in a very small town, Middletown, Delaware. I'm sure nobody's ever heard of it. We later moved to Dover, which was the capital of Delaware, which is where I spent my high school years. But as a very little kid, we lived there, and there was only one other Jewish family in town. So my parents celebrated Christmas so we wouldn't feel separate or different. The problem was my mother's grandmother, who we called Bubby Basha, traveled from relative to relative with her trunk full of her own pots and pans and dishes. And my mother learned that Bubby Basha was on her way to come and stay with us. And she was so afraid that Bubby Basha would judge us for having a Christmas tree. She took the tree and all the decorations and hid them in the closet. So that when my great grandmother appeared, it didn't look like we were having Christmas. So I just thought I would share that little weird story.
Thank you. Sarah. Sarah and Jasmine, okay?
Okay. Thank you, Diana, for this great topic. There's so many, it's brought up so many things for me. But you know, I grew up in Iran and Christmas is not celebrated there. But we had a neighbor who was an older woman. Of course, she seemed so old to me back then. She probably wasn't that old. And her son lived with her, and she was Christian. So she celebrated Christmas, and she used to put up the biggest Christmas tree that I still haven't seen one bigger in somebody's house. And so we would go and visit her every Christmas, and the best part was that she had American candy and chocolate, and she would just give them out, you know, so generously. And so Christmas was always a special time for me, and I always wanted us to have a Christmas tree, but we never did. So when I had my own place and became an adult, I finally got my own Christmas tree, and it was very exciting. So thank you for this great topic.
Thank you, everybody, for participating so beautifully. Jasmine, did you want to share?
It's actually Hyacinth. Hi, everyone. Hi, Diane.
Hi, Hyacinth.
Thank you for this wonderful topic. Yeah, I have two bittersweet sharings. One, my mom is actually behind us here, and when she comes in town, we always have a photographer friend of mine come and update our 4 generations picture. And so to miss my photographer because he passed away in August, and it's just, you know, it's like I have so many memories of that man because I'm actually looking at one that he took. But you know, he just so captured the sense of family so beautifully. And my other one, it's hard not to mention this one. My son passed away on December 9th of 1991. So, you know, that's hard to forget. And the holidays, and you know, we had bought him a little cute Christmas outfit and he wore it, but he was in the casket when he wore it. And we just, you know, I mean, I know most of us are parents and those things are hard to separate. And this comes with the holidays, but of course I also have the joyous times that I spend with my family, and all the Christmas parties going on this week. I'm sure you guys have plenty to attend. So we just keep the joy going. And Mastery Circle is a big source of joy for my life. So grateful for all of you. Happy holidays. Thank you.
Yeah, keep the joy going. Thank you. Tim, did I see your hand up?
Yes, I wanted to dial back to the original parties that we used to have at your place, Diana. And what we had was a big Christmas tree, and then everybody brought an ornament, and the ornament was put on the tree. And it was kind of an aspiration or intention for this Christmas and also going forward into next year. And so everybody's been talking about the beautiful Christmases they've experienced with the heartwarming things. And I started thinking, what if we had a tree here? And what image would I bring to the tree like we used to that would kind of capture the spirit and also look going forward And I just want to share this real quick. It's an image. This is what I would put on the tree. Keynote. Hopefully you can see there is a heart to the left, which is a Christian symbol. And then there's the medicine Buddha. And those two things have deep compassion. Buddhism is half compassion, half wisdom. And then, of course, there's the Sacred Heart, the Christian heart, Christ, and also the milagro of a heart. And that's what I would aspire to moving into this next year, to try and embody that, to try to bring that concept into my body, mind, and also my activities.
Thank you. Thank you. That's wonderful. Mary Grace.
Yeah. Sam and I had a really heartwarming experience this holiday season. You know, we're very involved with the shelter and parties today, actually. And so that's fun and exciting to create this Christmas every year for the kids at the shelter. But we were connected with a young man last week who I think I've talked about him before over the years. I found out about through our nextdoor.com. His mom was an alcoholic on the street, and he was living on the street with her as a small child. And anyway, there was a kind of a long story with that, but this young man is just a remarkable young man. He came from those kinds of humble beginnings and had support from us and some other people. And he now is on full scholarship at University of Arizona, but just kind of hit the skids, had some issues the last couple of months. And so Sam and I were able easily really to financially just kind of help him in the situation he was in. And he was so grateful for that. And you know, when we hung up the phone with him and had done it, both of us were tearful with, golly, there's the joy of being able to make a difference like that. It was so easy for us and so impactful and helpful for him. And I think more than anything, you know, I said to him, we have your back, because he's alone. You know, we've got your back. Very joyful.
Yeah, I would add, I was just overcome with joy after we sent him some money via Zelle or whatever it was. He needed a new computer and he had some debt, and so we helped him out with that, took care of that, and it just felt really wonderful. And every time I think about this kid or around him, I just feel nothing but compassion and love for him. You know, I had two parents that loved me, and you know, get home and we were never hungry, and this kid to see him making so much of himself. He was ready to graduate, and he wants to go to a school of pharmacy, become a pharmacist, and just you know, best part of Christmas so far.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's so much who you are. We so appreciate that about you and what you bring to us. Rena. You're muted, sweetheart.
Hi. Yes, thank you for the topic. Thank you for bringing us together. The symbol I will bring, the ornament I would bring is a dove of peace made out of olive wood from Bethlehem, because that's one of the things they do in Bethlehem. And olive wood the olive tree represents Israel, represents Palestine, represents the rootedness of the people in the land. So I've been carrying actually a dove with me throughout this holiday season. And something about ornaments, you know, growing up, Christmas was something that was not actually part of my experience in Israel. It was something like that the Christian did. So it was like a big cultural divide. But when I came to America, I remember being moved by the generosity and beauty and the lavishness, and it was like the too muchness of Christmas. I was overwhelmed with that. But on a personal note, when I was 23 years old, I was already like a mother for 2 children, and I knew that my marriage is on the verge, and I was very scared and alone, and I needed to take care of myself. Like I need to establish a sense of security so I can make better choices for myself. And the only way, or I thought I can make money, or that I chose to make money at that time, was to paint Christmas ornaments. And actually, I was pregnant. I was painting Christmas ornaments, and to sit there for like an hour and to see the intricate design, like I had a chance to be so appreciative of the beauty of something that I never had a tree, and I never saw it hanging, but it represented me preparing for the future, me saying I want to have agency, I want to have something that feels like stability. And those Christmas ornaments were my key for a sense of I'm taking care of my future. That's it.
Diana, we have about 10 minutes. And you're muted.
Okay, thank you. How did you hear my question about how much time I had left? Maybe you didn't. Maybe you just intuited to tell me.
No, I didn't.
That's so funny. Is there anybody else? I have a couple more stories, but we have time. Jonathan?
Yeah, I didn't tell a Christmas story.
Okay.
In Missouri, my dad was a basketball coach, college, and before they would play Christmas tournaments in different parts of the country, but before Christmas, all the players would come to the house and have a Christmas dinner, and then they would take off for the tournaments. And in high school, I got a chance to go with them, and that was the best Christmas I ever had. Just being one of being part of the team. I'll say it like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Such a warm feeling here with our memories. Lori?
For me, I was thinking about when I was about 3 years old, and we had a fireplace, and we were Jewish, but not in a way where we went to temple a lot. So I remember learning about Hanukkah presents like every day, but then there were stockings, Christmas stockings that were right above the fireplace. And then there was a small tree, and I said, "What is that?" And so that's a Hanukkah bush. So so with the situation, it was just a beautiful ambiance of light and joining of different things. I didn't see it as joining Christmas and Hanukkah, but just that it was just a joyful time. And later on, when I was more of a preteen, like some people talked about, there were some very interesting presents that I was curious about. So I would find them high up somewhere in the cabin, up in the closet, and I would open them up and attempt to rewrap them too. With, nobody would know about that. Of course, the wrapping was really like forget it, But it was just the joy with that. And later on, we when I was still young, there was this thing called Santa Claus Lane. So we would take a drive, and the houses were all lit up, and Santa Claus was handing out chocolate or candy canes, and he was, as far as I'm concerned, there's Santa Claus, and it was very joyful, the music and all the ambiance. So it was just a mixture of different things where it was celebratory and happy. So thank you.
You're welcome. Melanie?
What a fun morning listening to everybody's stories and your childhood memories. You really see the little children in everybody. I love that. I was the youngest of 4 kids, and as such, you know, I started enjoying Christmas when I had no idea what we were enjoying. You know, the other kids, if they were excited, I was excited. So that was the best. But we would always, my mother would tie our door handles together, but the boys' room was across the hall from the girls' room. So she would tie the door handles so neither of us could get out before they were ready, you know, before Santa had come with the packages in the morning. And I thought that was pretty clever of her. And then, of course, when she'd let the beasts free, we would rush out to get our Christmas stockings, because that's what, you know, was really the first thing. What did Santa bring and what was in your stocking? And it was, you know, almost always the same thing. We always got an apple and an orange. Seemed awfully strange for a winter in Iowa. It was a Christmas miracle, having fruit at Christmas. And it was, you know, it was such a simple time back then. And, you know, just having the same things in your stocking every year, it was just the rite of tradition and all of that. You know, we'd open our stockings, and then there'd be our whatever Santa had brought us under the tree, and we could open those, you know, we could get that gift, and then that was it. And then that Christmas had to wait for grandmas and grandpas to arrive. And that, you know, came a little later, and we all had to be dressed up in our Christmas finery for all the picture taking and the rest of the day of celebrating. And when my grandparents would arrive, they would come in the door with wrapped presents in laundry baskets, in big baskets. And I remember just being, you know, wow, like, you know, it was as close to a Macy's Day Parade as I was ever gonna get.
Right.
And one last thing was, my dad just loved Christmas. My sister was reminding me this the other day, that whenever we decorated the tree, he would stand there for hours taking each individual piece of tinsel and hanging it from a twig. It all had to be, you know, every single branch had to be, had to have a one piece of tinsel. And if you were doing a crummy job, you were out. No more than one strand at a time.
That's right. I'm glad you mentioned that. Thank you.
Thank you.
One last quick share from Levita, because we're going to run out of time.
Well, I'm loving this. Like Tim, thank you for the suggestion of coming up with a symbol and new ornament. I love that. But a really wonderful memory came to mind. I too was more or less a preacher's kid because we lived at the church. And the fondest memories I have is at Christmas time, somehow miraculously, a great big truck would show up and we'd all pile in and go around and do Christmas caroling. And it was crisp and cold and dark, and we were out at night, and we were jostled around in the back end of the truck and laughing and carrying on. And every now and then a house would, you know, come out with goodies for us, mostly hot chocolate, which was just like yummy off the charts, because there wasn't the chocolate that we have available now. It was usually pretty bitter homemade something with a marshmallow, and it didn't matter because it was warm. And that was just the most fun and inclusive is what comes to mind.
Yes.
You know, having the familiar carols, and whether you knew the words or not, you got to sing and join in and participate. And the thrill of people coming out of their homes and applauding. I mean, what a concept to applaud. And the next time I enjoyed that was at the Mastery Circle. One meeting, someone said they always wanted a standing ovation, and the whole room erupted with everybody jumping up and applauding. And it was like, oh my gosh, I'd never imagined such a thing. And we laughed our heads off, and it was just joyous. So thank you again for this memory.
I remember Susan Jeffers was shaking like a leaf when I invited her to speak at the Inside Edge. She hadn't published her book yet, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And she was shaking so much. And then we just all decided to stand on our chairs and applaud her at the end. She was just overwhelmed. And 3 weeks later, she was speaking at Madison Square Garden. So it was just quite magical. I just have two little quick things to share. One is that quite a few Christmases ago, I attended a luncheon, and a woman who had breast cancer was making trees out of costume jewelry. And she had them for sale to benefit breast cancer. So I bought one this size, and the one back there is really quite tall. It's quite giant. And then when I downsized to move to Palm Springs, I invited her over and I gave her a whole lot of costume jewelry that I didn't need anymore. And she was kind enough to take my mother's and my favorite pieces and embed them in these two trees. So this is, I'm appreciating what I have left after I've given so much away. It's been amazing. But there was a real miracle at our Wisdom Circle event. You know, I've been curating beauty all year. And Ted and I had a ranch in Temecula, and one day we went into a shop and there were some giant Kachina dolls that were handmade with suede and leather and beading, and one was a white buffalo and one was a bear. They were quite expensive, but we had them for our ranch, and then I moved them here. And I'm not the kind of person who goes out and looks to see how much I could get for a certain object. It's too much work to do that. But there was a woman who shared that she had only found out that she was part Native American because her father had died when she was 1, and nobody ever shared anything about him after that because the mother remarried. But she'd been feeling a calling to return to her Native American roots. She had adopted 2 Native American children and has a daughter who wants to curate Native American objects. And they have a great reverence for items like that. So I just had this sudden urge to give those to her. And she came over, and I think that was one of the most joyful givings that I've ever gotten to experience, how fulfilled they felt just by something that didn't have that deep a meaning to me, that meant so much to them. I'm so grateful for this and for all of you sharing your holiday memories and even a few visions. Thank you for letting me do this, and I'll turn it back to Sarah.
Thank you, Diana.
Thank you so much, Diana. It was a really wonderful morning.